Welcome to Light Overheat with Professor David Yamani. This week I have a hot take on the Jennifer Crumbley conviction in Michigan. Okay, so you know I don't ordinarily do hot takes because my preferred style is to sit back, gather information, reflect on things, and analyze them from the basis of my expertise as a sociologist of American gun culture. But a lot of people have been asking me about this Jennifer Crumbley conviction, and so I thought, let's give the people what they want. Here's a hot take. Now, it's almost in the very definition of a hot take that someone is just offering their opinion without any particular expertise in the area. So please understand that when I am commenting on this case, that is exactly what I'm doing. Now, I don't want to contribute to what Tom Nichols calls the death of expertise, so please recognize that I'm speaking here as an informed gun owner and parent, and not as a professor of gunology. Okay, in case you were under a rock somewhere, the case we're talking about is Jennifer Crumbley, the mother of the Oxford High School mass murderer who was brought to trial and convicted of involuntary manslaughter in connection with the mass murder perpetrated by her son. And here's my hot take. I don't have a problem with it. Okay, I'm a parent. I recognize that parents don't have full control over their children, but we can still act as responsible parents, and if we don't act within reasonable bounds of responsibility, then we may be held criminally liable for the actions of our children. When I got into guns in 2011, my kids were 16, 14, and 11 years old, and I did take them to the gun range to try shooting. They weren't really into it, so we didn't go very often, but I wanted to give them that opportunity. But when they were in my home, and even at the range, obviously, my firearms were never accessible to them without my direct supervision, right? I kept my firearms locked or safely stored or under my direct control at all times. Jennifer Crumbley failed to prevent the unauthorized access to firearms in her home, and she failed at it quite miserably, it seems, given what she knew about her son's mental health condition and given that she allowed him to have unfettered access to this firearm. She also failed to intervene when she was called to the school to address concerns that the school had. I should say the school also failed to intervene, so I'm not going to be surprised to see them paying out some sort of civil settlement. But here we're concerned with the actions of the parent. She failed to take a responsible action at that moment. And the reason, I think, I wasn't on the jury, but it seems fairly apparent that one of the reasons the jury felt she was culpable is because in the immediate aftermath of the shooting, the mother seemed to be aware that it was possible or even probable that her son was the shooter. She gave him access to the firearm. She didn't try to take control over the situation when she was called to the school. She behaved irresponsibly at a minimum, and according to this jury under Michigan's law, she behaved criminally. Now, I recognize and share some of the concerns that I've seen all the way from the New York Times to gun rights advocates that these laws are now going to be used to attempt to punish parents, especially gun-owning parents. And we should always be aware that whenever a war is being fought on any type of crime, particularly as it involves guns, these laws potentially get disproportionately applied to those who are disproportionately likely to commit violence with firearms, which are poor, young, black men. But I don't think the case of a gang-involved youth in an inner city who is engaging in these cycles of retaliatory violence, which is so much of the everyday violence in America, and the case of Jennifer Crumbley in this mass school shooting in Michigan are parallel, right? You know, if I kept my gun secured from my children, right? If I was called to the school because my child was having problems around guns and I took appropriate actions to try to make sure that I address that situation, right? And somehow my son or daughter got access to my firearms by breaking open one of my safes and stealing my gun and going and shooting people, I don't think that I could be held criminally liable for that action. I behaved responsibly to try to address the situation, right? And so any gun owners who behave responsibly and do not allow unauthorized access to their firearms, they should sleep well at night knowing that if something were to be done harmfully with any of their firearms, that they did what they could to prevent that. They wouldn't be held criminally liable. They wouldn't be ethically responsible or morally responsible. That's my position. That's what I tried to do when I had young kids in my home. That's what I try to do when I have young people, including my grandchildren, coming to my home now, is to keep my firearms safely stored or under my direct control at all times. Jennifer Crumbley failed to do this, and it was compounded by these other factors of knowing her child had mental health concerns, that she failed to intervene at the school, and that she knew that he was possibly or probably the shooter when the thing went down. So, you know, this is a unique case, I think, in many ways. I support the decision to the extent that I understand the law and that what the jury's decision-making process was. I'm not an attorney. I wasn't in the jury. So if I've got something wrong, feel free to clarify for me. I'm also interested to know what your hot takes are on this case, or if you are educated in this area, please let me know what a light take is on that. How can you bring light to this heated situation?